for next 45 minutes or 1 hour or so, let's keep it more interactive. And, it's kind of not me saying and, all the time explaining what we are doing, but let's also keep interacting in terms of having more understanding of how the youth can impact, the various initiatives in the field of climate change, particularly in sustainability, as a whole, not only in climate change, and particularly when it comes to the sustainability and climate change impacts on the agri-food sector. My apologies that I do not have really prepared slides for this session. I may have a couple of slides which I'll present in due course of time. But we may interact on any of the topic of your interest, which you think we should be discussing more as we go ahead in this session. So to start with, as the organizers just introduced, I have been associated with one of the world's leading agri-food sector company. The company's name is Jain Irrigation Systems Limited. I'm sure many of you might have heard it. It's one of the largest micro irrigation company worldwide. And they're also one of the largest food players when it comes to the mango and vegetable processing. Allow me to elaborate a bit on this because the business model of the company is something which is one of its kind and which has all the aspects of sustainability that we call 3P: people, planet, profit. So the bottom line of the sustainability is embedded in the business model of the company. Let me try if I can share a few slides about it. Please allow me a few minutes. Yeah, so can you see my screen?
No, sir.
Okay, I am trying to share it. How is it now?
It's not visible, sir.
Not visible.
Now it's sharing, sir.
I see. Okay. Okay. So I hope everyone can see the screen. Okay.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. So this is the philosophy of the company, and what I would like to draw your attention here is to the mission of the company. The mission is leave this world better than you found it. So this mission goes along with whatever we do here, be it manufacturing, be it our products and services, be it our services to the farmers. So this is a very, usually you might have come across this quote that agriculture not only gives riches to the nation, but only riches she can call her own is the agriculture. So as you might know that 60% population, approximately 55 to 60% population is still in the country which is directly or indirectly dependent on the agriculture. So, and okay, I'll come to that later. I was trying to explain about this cycle, which we call here as self-sustaining agri-cycle. So what we do is we invest into R&D, whereas the focus, the main thrust is on the high-tech agri inputs. And when I say high-tech agri inputs, it includes micro irrigation systems, and which includes drip systems and the sprinkler systems. Then there are some tissue culture technology, whereas you use biotechnology and you prepare very high quality plants. So that's also goes as inputs to the farms. So we call these technologies as high-tech agri inputs, and then of course we have IoT and AI and automation connected to these technologies, which is customized as per the requirement of the field and the customers and the governments. So a major investment goes into R&D, whereas these high-tech agri inputs are developed. And these are developed in a way that when these products are being used, okay, then the impact of these products while used should be above the baseline towards the positive side. Let me try to elaborate this more. Let's talk of an electronic system, or let's talk of an electrical equipment, and maybe iron, which you use in your home. So whenever you use an iron, you have to plug it into any electrical circuit, and you consume electricity to use that. So similarly, for many of the products, be it washing machine in your home or be it many other products, you require energy to run those products or to use those products, basically. So from the energy point of view, a product which will be energy efficient, or let's say which will be environmentally sustainable, or which will be sustainable from the energy point of view, will be a product which gives similar output but utilizes less energy. So same principle goes in the agriculture with our micro irrigation products. We design the products which, while being used in the field, use least energy and save more water. So this is how we define that the products, while being used, help environmental sustainability on the field. I'll talk more on this as we go, ahead in the discussion. Then another thrust is that, as you know, that in India, if you know the agriculture statistics, there is about 150 or 160 million hectares of land, which is called arable land. Arable lands is where the agriculture is possible, where you can sow the seed and grow some kind of crops. So out of this entire 150, 160 million hectare land, there are various data, and the figures keep changing as per the various sources. So let's say there is 150 million hectare land, arable land available in the country. You would be surprised to know that 50% of that land does not receive any regular irrigation. So it's only rain-fed land. Now, out of the remaining 50%, which is being irrigated, major part of that, about let's say 70 to 80% of that, is on the flood irrigation, which utilizes which is very, very heavy energy and water intensive. So here comes the entire environmental cycle in the agriculture into the picture. So first of all, you are using fresh water, and those of you, I haven't been introduced to you in the beginning, and I missed to know what your background is. Maybe once I finish this slide, we can do that before we move ahead in the session. So, but many of you would be knowing that India is a country where we have almost 18% of the world population, 16% of the land resources, but we have only 4% of water. And out of that 4%, only 0.8% is accessible to the human beings. And out of that 0.8%, 80% goes to the agriculture. And out of that 80%, 70% is being used by the flood irrigation. That means a lot of water is going waste that is not being utilized by the crops. So here comes the, this environmental sustainability into picture, that water is such a scarce resource and 85% of the water goes into one sector only, which rather puts the pressure on the other sector like domestic or industrial sector, which also consistently need water. So this is why, you know, you keep hearing about this news about water being scarce and two states fighting for it, communities fighting for it. And there is this popular saying that if the World War III will happen, it will happen over water. So, I mean, there are various quotes on that. There is also another quote that a person who solves the problem of water, he needs 2 Nobel Prize, one for environment and another for peace. Because if you solve the issue of water, you also solve the issue of peace. Then similarly, when you okay, I'll come to that later on. Let's not deviate it here. So we ensure that least water, while the least water and least optimum energy is being used, optimum energy and water are being used, there has to be more profits to the farmers. I told you these statistics that there is only half of the land is irrigable land out of the total arable land. And if you see the statistics of the farmers, 80% of the farmers are smallholder or
Hello, Adin sir. I think you are not audible.
Sir, I think he has some net issues.
All right. Okay. Okay. We will wait for that. Adin sir. Hello.
I think I was dropped in between.
Yes. 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 Okay. Okay. You can.
Okay, so okay, I hope before I was dropped, I was audible appropriately to everyone, and all the attendees were able to listen to me appropriately. If someone can confirm, please.
Sir, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, perfectly fine, sir, so far.
Wonderful, wonderful. I was talking about the another statistics. I initially gave you the statistics about the arable land and the water resources in the country. Then I was talking before I was dropped off. I was talking about the statistics about the farmers. 80% of the farmers are the smallholder farmers. So until farmer is convinced he is into the most risky business, if you can think of any risky business, I think agriculture, and you would agree with me that there is nothing as risky as the agriculture in the country is. So given that the anomalies of the climate and all uncertainty of the monsoon and all other environmental and climatic factors, this is one of the most risky business, and this is one of the most important thing to do, because if you try to I don't know by now how much have been you able to visualize this. Again, take a deep breath and a pause and think it this way, that in this country, again, let's recap what I said. 18% population, 16% land, only 4% of the water, and we need food for everyone. Okay, and we are going to grow another, let's say, our population. Yeah, I'll be putting the slides. I'll be putting the slides soon. So the resources are very limited, particularly water and land. We also need development, and we have to feed a ever increasing population. we'll be soon hitting 1.5 billion in the country, maybe another by 2030 or 2035 or so. So this is the challenge. So the challenge is that you have to grow more from less, and while doing so, you have to be you also have to be sustainable, you know, in your practices. So this is where you know, the organization, the Jain Irrigation has been working. So they have this, you know, these are the objectives of the R&D team, that how can they enable farmers to grow more from less. And this is how they actually pioneered basically these technologies. I'll just put this slide again here. Yeah. I hope you can see it now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. Right. So right. So we enable them because you provide water just with micro irrigation technologies. You provide it to the root zone of the plants. Okay. So only the water, there is a technical term these agriculture scientists call it, that's called CWR, crop water requirement. You don't have to fill the ground, you know, you just have to give it the water which is required by the root zone, and accordingly the fertilizers, you know, the macro and micro fertilizers. Then you have higher growth actually. It's like, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Okay, okay, fine. There was something visible on my screen. Okay, fine. So now, when farmers are able to grow more with this technology, the next question comes. You know, this market is very dicey thing. You know, because you don't have any certainty in the market, and we all keep hearing for last 1 year. A lot of this issue is going on, you know, farmers are on the streets and they are demanding that their crops should be given, you know, optimum price or a good price, so that, I mean, the agriculture could be profitable. So 2 decades ago, company also thought when they are able to, you know, invent or bring high-tech inputs to the farmers, they are also able to train farmers. And with their technology, farmers are able to grow more. So why can't we connect with them? So that's how the food business came into the picture. And around 2.5 decades ago, we started buying back from the farmers for one of our pilot project. And then that pilot project became mainstream. And that's how we evolved this agreement, which we now call contract farming, rather contract farming. So very briefly, it's like we have around 5,000 to 10,000 farmers in that initiative, whereas we buy vegetables, primarily the onions from the farmers. And let's say this is X. So let's say we say them that we'll give you a price B, and in the market the price is B minus 1. Then we'll pay B to farmer. If the price is B plus 1, then we'll pay B plus 1. So in each case, if the market price is less than the assured price, then the farmer will get the assured price. And if market price is higher than the assured price, then he'll get the market price. So this is how the mechanism is. So, and then when we add value to these products and we manufacture these products in our manufacturing units, and whatever profits we earn, again, the part of the profits goes back to the research and development. So this is basically the cycle. You do R&D for the farmers, you train the farmers, you make the products which saves water, which saves energy. I'll give you an example in next slides. And then you also connect, you know, farm to fork linkage by buying back from the farmers, processing it, selling it into the international markets, and then adding value, and the profits which you earn, those part of the profits you again put into the research and development. This is briefly the model we work. Now coming to the agriculture, I'm sorry, as I said, that it's been a very short call, and I was followed up by a Lakshya Society and by the organizers to deliver this in a very, very short notice. So I don't have, all the data or facts which I'm saying right now on the slides, but I can share that later on with you. Now coming to the climate change, yeah, that's the model basically. This is the agri chain which I just explained to you. So on the climate change, particularly if you see, if we see the statistics, and there is about, as per the last submission of country, that's I think that was made in 2010. If I'm not mistaken, maybe there could be a very recent submission also, but as per my last information, the submission which went to UN from India, the total emissions from agriculture sector from the country were close to 17,000 million metric tons. Okay, I may need to check these numbers again. There is a submission, all of you can find it on Google. That's called India's NDC submission to the United Nations. There is a website called UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. You can yourself go into the national submissions page and you'll find these submissions. I mean, it's a bit of surfing and you'll get this information. So the point here is that out of these, 1700 million metric tons, a part of the emissions, which is very important, which is a methane emissions, around 330 million metric tons comes from the rice fields. Okay. So rice fields, as you know, that stagnant water it's a habitat for the methanogenic bacteria, and the environmental conditions are so because the water is stagnant all the time, so it generates methane into the atmosphere. Then there is enteric fermentation. You know that these kettles, they have this bacteria in their gut which releases methane. Then there are energy emissions, and which is basically pumping the electricity. I told you already that half of the land is irrigable and is basically getting irrigation water, and most of this water is pumped either through electricity pump or through the diesel pumps, in remote areas. So as per one estimate, the 4% emissions from the energy are caused by 4% of the total emissions of the country are caused by these pumping systems. So this is another aspect of climate change, irrigation, which is usually not discussed basically. And then the third is fertilizer use. And then there are these, soil use, land use, agriculture, forestry, and other land use, basically. FOLA is actually other separate segment though. But these are the major, energy use, the paddy cultivation, and then you have this enteric fermentation. And there are 2-3 categories also. I'll share this slide later on with you. The point what I'm trying to communicate here is what we have been doing as a company for last, let's say, last 3-4 decades is to bring in the technologies which can substantially reduce the GHG emissions from the pumping systems. So how it happens when you put any micro irrigation systems, you water the crop daily. Okay, you unlike flood irrigation, many of you would be aware that they irrigate either once in a week or twice a week. They fill the field and they just leave it. So most of the water actually either evaporates or seeps through, basically goes waste. But in with micro irrigation, particularly drip irrigation and sprinkler irrigation also, you give water on daily basis, but as per the crop water requirement, temperature and all, you have a simple calculation there. You have the evapotranspiration and temperature and these environmental factors, how much is the radiation, and you calculate the crop water requirement. Accordingly, you plant. What you do is you though irrigate daily basis, but you pump less. Okay. So you save a lot of energy on the pumping side. And I and my team were involved in doing this impact assessment recently, that how much impact if, entire country start using micro irrigation systems, rather flood irrigation, how much impact could be made, So what we were able to found is that in last 30 years, our micro irrigation systems have covered 5 million hectare of land. And out of that, we have been able to reduce around 80 billion cubic meter of water and around, if I'm not mistaken, 12 gigaton of carbon dioxide. So this is the equivalent emissions which could be reduced. So these are just figures. I have some old figures in this PPT also. I think those are 2-3 years old. Let me put that in front of you, if I have those. Just a second. Yeah, here it is. So this is the study I was talking to, that these are the estimated water savings. These figures, this is 2 years old data. So these figures are now updated, and this total water which has been saved by these technologies, which I just introduced you in the initial slides to you, is now 80 billion cubic meter. And the carbon dioxide emissions, I told you 14, I'm sorry, I told you gigaton. It's not gigaton, it's million tons of CO2 equivalent. So until 2019, it was around 12 million tons of CO2 equivalent. Now, recently, when we updated this study, it came to around 14 million tons of CO2 equivalent. So this is on the technology part here. This is just an introduction about the company and how the company is basically impacting positively on the climate change mitigation part in the agriculture sector and food sector. That's what I explained to you. Now, let me, because I wanted to keep this session open for the, I wanted to keep this quite interactive, only I should not be speaking here. I should also learn something from you. So let me stop sharing and let me bring in you in the discussion. This is just a brief, as a part of sustainability team, I just gave you a hang of a small understanding of the projects, couple of projects which we are doing. We have some interesting projects on how the food waste is converted into biogas, and then GHG impact is again, the climate change mitigation is again done with that. By the discussion so far, is something building up in your mind that you want me to specifically tell you? I told you that these are a couple of the areas. We work in the field of water. We work in the field of, technology that actually helps helps farmers growing more with less. At the same time, minimizes the impact on the environment and reduce the GHG emissions from the atmosphere. So, helps mitigating the climate change also. So this is just kind of a introduction from my end. We have another, let's say, at least 30 minutes minimum with us, maybe more. I think organizers can tell about it. But
30 minutes.
I should be very specific. I mean, you might come one by one. Maybe Miss Hima can coordinate. And do you want me to speak on something specific in the next 30 minutes which are left with us? I hope you could hear me.
Sure, sir.
Yes,
So
sir.
if any one of you so far, by the introductory, information which I've shared with you, do you think I should be specific to any topic that will be? I would like to hear that from you.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Dear sir, I have a question or my opinion about. Sir, am I audible? Hello.
Yeah, please say. Yeah.
Yeah, as you said that the change of irrigation pattern from pumping to the more technology like drip and sprinkler irrigation reduce the carbon emission and that things. But the issue is that those technologies are very costly. I think the drip irrigation and sprinkler irrigation. All the farming community, basically, our farming community is a small scale farmers, particularly in our state. Most of them are small scale farmers. So I am from Kerala. Most of them are small scale farmers. So their easy method is to pumping because it is cost effective. The cost is very less rather than the technology like.
Right. I got your point. I'll respond to this.
So how can we solve that problem? So the expense of these technologies, the farmers, the small scale farmers can afford that expense. This is a big issue that we are facing.
I got your point. I mean, I'll explain on this, but otherwise this entire session could turn into marketing of drip irrigation kind of a session, but I'll respond to you. I want to be more focused towards the sustainability, water and climate change, circular economy, life cycle assessment, etc. So my question to you was that, do you want me to be specific to any topic in next 30 minutes? Of course, I'll respond to your question also later on.
In my opinion, you can spoke about the technologies that used in this irrigation, particularly for farming, and what are the various technologies and whether it's useful for our farmers. That's better. It's my opinion.
How the technologies in the agriculture could help. Yeah, someone wants to say something. Yeah, please say. Is there anyone want to come in?
No, sir, you can proceed. You can proceed.
Right. Okay, so yeah, I'll keep this next 30 minutes around the sustainable agriculture, how technologies can help while they can help farmers bringing more productivity, how can they also help mitigating climate change, saving water, improving human health, and also having positive impact on the biodiversity. Let's since we are all of us have not done a very good homework before this session, so let's fix this as the theme of the session: sustainable agriculture and the technologies that help improving the impacts on the environment, such as on the water, climate change, and biodiversity, of course, and human health up to some extent. I'll go one by one. Before I move on that, I'll respond. I would like to respond to the question which was asked by Mr. Abraham. Okay, yeah. So your question is very pertinent, and it's a good question. Still, when I am saying so much about these technologies and government is also taking initiatives, the cost factor has been one of the key barriers so far. But I don't know if you're aware, recently, particularly the new government, they have taken a lot of initiatives. In fact, the state government have taken initiatives, and there is a good amount of subsidies available nowadays. Particularly in the states where there used to be no support earlier. For example, I recently came across in one of the meetings, our internal meetings, that UP government has more than 90% subsidy now on these systems. So once you install these systems, and then you need to go through that process of getting subsidy, and you get 95% of the money back to you. There are also some of the, there are many NGOs which also help people, putting up these systems by giving them funding. There are these banks like NABARD and some other rural banks or cooperative banks which also have plans for the farmers. They give them loan on a very low interest rate. I mean, these are very specific cases I'm telling you, or the projects. And there are many government schemes also. Like one of the projects I did, we did actually as a company in Ramthal, which is the largest project of integrated irrigation, we call it. Whereas we replaced canal through piping system, and then we provided drip irrigation the micro irrigation to each and every farmer. And the farmers who were conventionally taking only one crops, they are now taking 3 crops, with the help of the technology. So this we have done in a place called Ramthal in Karnataka. So government is also providing a lot of support apart from the, private partners like ADB, NABARD and all. And states also have their own subsidies nowadays. There is a special program called PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Vikas Pradhan Mantri Krishi
Sinchai Yojana. Sinchai Yojana.
PMKSY is the
PMKSY. Yeah.
So, of course, I'm not a better person I'm not an expert on that. Maybe someone from our marketing team could explain you better on that. But the point is that there is a lot of support available nowadays. Government is also gradually understanding the importance of these technologies. In last couple of years, you might have heard Prime Minister, demonstrating micro irrigation as one of the key technologies for the future. So slowly they are picking up the pace. I hope that financial barriers would no more be. It's more of awareness and training, and farmers need to realize what is the impact, and how would he be able to convert his before I finish on this, there is a saying that you just don't believe what you hear, but you believe on what you see actually. So you are from Kerala. I'm not sure if we have one training center there, but we have one very big center in Tamil Nadu. There is a place called Udumalpatte. It's around 70 kilometers from Coimbatore. Whereas we have facility to train hundreds of the farmers at a time. I think it's around 200 acres, maybe around 1,000 acres campus, which is specially, it's like a live demonstration of the technology for the farmers. Okay, now coming to this topic, how the sustainable technologies can help, mitigate climate change and save more water, and at the same time also, help farmers growing more. I will continue with the 2 examples. Let me see if I can show you one slide for that. Yeah. Allow me a little time. I'm sorry, I'm taking little time. Please allow me this.
No problem, sir.
Please allow me a moment. I am trying to open a relevant slide for you.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, right. I found it. Right. So I can, let me share it. Can you see my screen?
No, sir.
Maybe now?
Now it's sharing, sir.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, so this is what I was explaining to you, that in India, the 80% of the available fresh water is used in the agriculture with 40% water use efficiency. And India actually, in 90s or middle of the last century, it was a water-rich country in that sense. We were water-adequate country at least. But as we moved more into the 21st century and the kind of development took its pace, we are, very clearly a water-stressed country now, whereas the per capita, availability is reducing to 1,500, and even the recent estimates tell that it is even less than 1,300 cubic meters per capita now. In mid of the last century, it used to be about 200 meter cube per capita. So this is the data which I was giving you. Luckily, I found this. So this is the exact number: 30 million abstraction wells withdrawing 251 meter cube groundwater per year. And irrigation, this is very interesting, irrigation alone consumes about 20% of the total electricity. So the 20% of the electricity GHG emissions are actually can be related to the irrigation and our food, which we are having basically. Then roughly 4% of the India's total carbon emissions are due to this abstraction, correct? So our estimate is that if of course it's not practically possible, out of total land which is today being irrigated, there is a study done by a project which is called National Mission on Micro Irrigation. At least 45 million hectare land in the country is that which is ready for adoption of micro irrigation. And so far, we have been able to do only 10 million hectares. So there is a long way to go. Okay. So now, this is interesting fact. I don't know if you can see this. Can I remove this? The fact is that drop of 1 meter in groundwater table after water withdrawal will increase India's CO2 emissions by 1 meter. So this is actually a model which is derived based on the GHG emissions per billion cubic of water meter, per billion cubic of water extracted. So if there is a drop of 1 meter, so the GHG emissions could increase by 1%. That's what the estimate is basically. So this is basically the correlation. This I already spoke that the technology, from here we need to transfer to here basically. Whereas you give water where it is needed. these are again the set of statistics that with this technology, you can have crop yields. Again, it's very rough figure in terms of this number is different for different crops, and I mean, you can achieve this only when these sustainable practices, sustainable farm practices are being practiced on the field. But on an average, 30 to 70% less water and 50 to 300% more yield. So the thing which I was telling you, growing more from less is possible. And these data I already discussed with you, that this is the impact technology could create. What I was telling you is this. This is interesting. How many of you know about water? Are you aware of water footprint? Or have you heard of virtual water transport? Anyone would like to respond to this?
Yeah, virtual water transports through our sugar, and there are a lot of other things that we produced and known as export, things like that.
Yeah, right. So like the again, kind of a disclaimer here. I don't know the background of the participants of this conversation, and I have taken this as understood that all of you who are participating here have basic understanding of what greenhouse gas emissions is, what the climate change is, and what a water footprint, etc. is. Or do you think I should touch on that as well briefly? Any one of you? Okay, so everyone has the basic understanding. I understand. Okay, so water footprint is like carbon footprint is, for example, if I ask you, what is your carbon footprint? So carbon footprint is the amount of CO2 equivalent which are emitted by one's activity. You know, it could be a person, it could be an organization, it could be a product. So if it is a person, it's called person's carbon footprint. If it is a product, it's called product's carbon footprint. If it is an organization, you can also calculate organization's carbon footprint, or people call it corporate carbon footprint. You can calculate manufacturing process carbon footprint, etc. So there are various international standards. It's pretty simple, you know. The amount of energy, basically amount of energy which you use when you use that energy. Energy is generated usually through combustion of fossil fuels. So when you combust, then there is release of these gases, primarily CO2, and sometimes nitric oxide, etc. Also, not particularly in combustion, but in other industrial processes. So then there is a formula, whereas you can convert all these GHG emissions. There are 6 major GHG gases you might be knowing: carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, then your methane, then sulfur hexafluoride, then HF6, SF6. Okay, so these are the 6 major gases, and then water vapor is also one of the major greenhouse gas. And when you convert these gases, so there is a term called GHG potential, you know, global warming potential. So which is 1 for carbon dioxide, and all the gases are then they are measured against carbon dioxide, and then it's the cumulative unit is called CO2 equivalent. So it could be gram of CO2 equivalent, kilogram of CO2 equivalent, or tons of CO2 equivalent. So it's pretty simple. If you use, let's say, 2 units of electricity per day for your office work or your personal work, then 2 into there is an emission factor. You don't need to go in that. These factors are available in various standards, and then you get grams of CO2 emitted from that. Similarly, the car which you drive, what is the efficiency of the engine? How much fuel does it consume for 1 kilometer? How many kilometers you travel every day? Then similarly, your transportation carbon footprint could be calculated. Similarly, in the agriculture, I told you that there is a pumping carbon footprint, Then there is a carbon emission, which is of course nitrous oxide emission due to fertilizer use. Then there is methane emissions also in rice, which is because of the stagnant water and the ecosystem developed due to the growing practices of the rice. So that's again one of the major, GHG emissions from the agriculture sector. So in recent years, in last 5-6 years, we have worked on this, and we have, I think, one of the largest pool of the agriculture scientists in the country who work on these technologies, and they are continuously on the field. They're testing it at various locations. So we now have a technology whereas you can grow rice without an inch of water, without a single centimeter of water standing in the field. That means you can grow rice with drip irrigation. This technology is now available, and that has been pioneered by our company, Jain Irrigation, in the country. So can you see? Yeah. These are these pictures. If you can see, I think one pilot is done in Tamil Nadu already. It's been very successful. The yields have gone up to 40%, and the water is actually reduced. Okay, and yield, I mean, average, this is of course case to case basis, but the average yield is again close to 20 to 24%. So you not only reduce the water, while you reduce the water, you actually remove a lot of GHG, a lot of methane emissions from the rice fields. So we are, I mean, if you see this entire belt, and rice is one of the most popular staple food. If you Google right now, you'll find various estimates. Close to 20 liters of water is consumed in growing just kg of rice. It varies from geography to geography, I mean state to state, but on an average, close to 3,000 liters of water is used for growing 1 kg of rice. Similarly, estimates for your food, a cup of coffee require, I guess, another 100 liters of. Then your leather shoes, they require 16,000 liters of water. That's their water footprint. Similarly, every product has a carbon footprint also. So what I'm saying is that, I mean, with the hard work put in by our scientists, we have been able to develop the technology, whereas you address very crucial 3-4 points. And while addressing these points, that means you reduce virtual water or water footprint. When I said virtual water export, that means a lot of rice is being exported to the countries outside. So you are also exporting water, and which is such a scarce resource. I told you initially that only 4% of the water is available in the country, and out of that 4%, only even less than 1% is accessible for utilization. So the point here is that with this, you reduce the water, you reduce the methane emission up to a great extent. We have put in experiments, and they are exactly calculating the fluxes, that how much is the methane emission. I mean, how much percentage is it, whether it is 70%, 80%, 90%, that will come to know soon. And then while you are doing so, because farmer does not understand this thing, again, the same point, he will only adopt the technology, he will only save the environment when he gets some benefit out of it. Benefit in terms of yield. That's the foremost benefit a farmer might have. So with this, the maximum yield is 50%, and average yield could be 20 to 24%. As I told you, water is reduced to 70%. So, and then of course, fertilizer is also reduced in there. So this is the technology which I wanted to bring to your notice. These are again the same statistics which I was telling to you. Another now, since we also have this is all about water use efficiency at farm level. By bringing water use efficiency at farm level, you could address the address the issue of water, address the issue of GHG emissions, and also improve the yield of the farmers. And one more interesting fact, which is not studied, which is yet to be studied actually, and our teams also have not studied that, but they have observed is that if this technology is adopted by farmers, that means if rice is grown without stagnant water by using micro irrigation, then there will be a very huge impact on the human health also, because stagnant water is home to mosquitoes. And I don't know if you have seen these statistics. There is this, graphic which is being a creative message, which is being circulated nowadays on the WhatsApp and other social media also. And the heading is that animals who kill human. So can you tell me which is the animal or which is the living creature which kills most of the humans in a year? Any guess? Which animal kills most humans in a year, in a given year? Any guess on that?
Maybe mosquito.
It is indeed mosquito. So mosquito kill almost 1 million people in a year. And that's sort of a rough data, you know. And by the way, who could be the second animal? Any guess? I mean, this is a bit deviation from the topic, but just to bring a different flavor in the discussion.
Snake,
Sorry, which one?
snake,
I didn't hear that. Can you say it loudly?
snake,
Snake is third. Okay, second animal is human itself. So after mosquito, it's human who kill human, or maybe more, you know. Okay, that was a GK question. Now coming to this, I think the last part, yeah, right. We are well within time. I'll just finish by giving you another example. So now, again, one more technology. So since we have this experience, and we helped up, reaching out to 7 million farmers, in the country, more than that, in fact. So we thought of moving towards integrating this micro irrigation, drip irrigation, and pumping and sustainable farming with the in an integrated way. All these technologies so far which I have explained to you are at the farm level, but in most of the part of the countries, if you see particularly in northern India, central India, maybe in southern India also it might be true. At many places, the water, which comes to the farm itself is a very, very inefficient medium, and that medium is canal. In India, still the channelization of the water, fresh water, happens through canals, and in canal the water evaporation rates, water seepage rates are extremely high. I mean, if you see, as good as in high temperatures, as good as 40 to 50% of the water can be just evaporated or seeped, So that's called conveyance efficiency. What I talked till now was how improving efficiency on the farm could help environmental sustainability as well as help farmers, growing more from less and making the agriculture a profitable affair. Pushed this concept, which is called Jain Integrated Irrigation Solution. I'm not sure if you can read it properly. So this is a model which shows various types of, various cases, you know. So this is the least efficient case, whereas water flows through canals. The conveyance efficiency through field canal through a major canal is only 56%, and in flood irrigation it is only, let's say, 30 to 40%. So overall efficiency of the project is only 56% or somewhere around 60% or so. Another case is when you have open canal with some pipes laid down on the field. Okay, so through pipes you are able to cover up a part of the farm efficiency. Then the efficiency of the canal, minor canal, and the pipe system is 66%. Another example is that where you have this distributary canal and you have pipe system, and then you are also using those pipes, not only the main pipes but sub-main pipes also, and you are using pipe system to take water to the walls, and it's kind of a mix. You are not completely using micro irrigation, but you are using piping network so your efficiency improves up to 76%. This is another example, whereas you are putting up some sprinkler systems and water is still coming through canal. The entire project's efficiency, water use efficiency, goes up to 86%. This is the ideal model, and the project in Ramthal, which I was mentioning, has used this technology, whereas they have addressed both efficiency to the maximum level, you know, in the sense that from the river itself, this is the water resource. The water has been pulled up through a piping network. And just to tell you, I missed saying this, we also have a piping division, whereas we manufacture one of the largest diameter size pipe in the Asia. So this pipe, which is depicted here, is around 200 mm of dia. That means it is of 2 meter plus. You know, we have 2.5 meter dia HDP pipes, manufacturing machines with us. So with this, with these giant pipes, we propose to replace the canal, open canal, so that conveyance efficiency could be brought from 56% to 99%. And when you have entire system with drip irrigation, so you have complete efficiency, water use efficiency in the entire system. And the impact of this system will be very positive in terms of GHG reductions as well. Again, that needs to be studied. It will be multifold, you know. The amount which I told you was about this only, farm use. I mean, the numbers which I showed you earlier was about this only, farm use, farm level water use efficiency. So we call this resource to root model. And in new projects, we are talking to a lot of stakeholders that, you know, in order to, you know, reach the India's goal to reduce its GHG emissions by 35% by 2035, we will have to, you know, bring in these technologies into the agriculture. Many of you would be aware, I hope, that India has taken a commitment that it will reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, so country's carbon footprint, by 30 to 35% from 2005 level by 2035. So, with that, I think in agriculture, these kind of technologies are much needed. In the end, before you open up for the Q&A, I would like to end up by, you know, by giving you one example, which we are doing. Just a second. This is all about renewable energy and all. Because this was about youth, I wanted to give that. Do we have some time, madam? Do we have, how much time do we have left with us?
Sir, 10 more minutes, sir, maximum.
Okay. So, you know, this is one initiative I would like to highlight here before I pose. This is called Future Agriculture Leaders of India. What is happening beyond that, what I have said, that these are the technologies and these technologies needs to be adopted. And these are the impacts on the water and climate change and sustainability. Beyond that, what is happening is that farmer's son is not going into the farming. You think about it around you. So because farming is considered as a second level profession. I mean, the one who cannot do anything will do farming, provided he has his own land. And the fact is that with the growing population, land is also getting, it's getting less, generation by generation, it's getting divided. So with small piece of land, so much cost of inputs, so much risk and uncertainty of the climate, it's being really very, very risky affair. So there is need for the next generation to take them that there are technologies available nowadays which can help, which can help reducing or mitigating these risks up to some extent. For example, there are these technologies called shade nets, poly housing, whereas you can have a controlled climate. We have, had I another 1 hour, I would have explained you how we have developed a tissue culture technology and how we have a shade house, which we call future. So you have a poly house, it's, you have these iron angles, and then you have entire poly house shed nets. And then you have these automated systems, which where you sense the temperature, you fix the temperature, and your entire air, water, and temperature could be controlled. So there are subsidies also available for these kind of technologies in various states. There are various subsidies about it. So the point is that there is a need to tell the posterity, the future generation, that there are technologies available. And if you adopt those technologies, modern technologies, sustainable technologies, agriculture could also be a business for you, could also be a profession for you. You don't have to leave that. So with this vision, we have participated in a coalition of industries. Other industries in that coalition are Godrej, Mahindra, Star Agri, ITC, UPL, Bayer. These are 6 companies in that. They are going to the schools in Maharashtra and Gujarat to start with, and they have an idea of taking it to the entire country, and we are supporting them. There is an organization called Future Agriculture Leaders. You can Google this name on and you'll find their websites. So as of now, they are covering around thousands of schools in Maharashtra and Gujarat, and they go and do camps with 8th class students, because 8th and 9th is the phase when student, they keep thinking, they keep discussing with their parents, what do they want to do in their future? What do they want to become? So at that point, this program, the representatives of FALI, they give them practical exposure. And for example, we donate them sometimes shed net, sometimes we provide demonstration to them. And the 8th class, 9th class students, they grow crop in that practical, in that demonstration, and they do entire maths. They also sell their crop, and they do this economics, that how much was the input cost, what was the growing cost, and how much is my profit if I link with the market, etc. So this is an initiative to take this message that with the modern technologies, we have hope, we can feed to the growing population. Only matter is, adoption and, practicing the sustainable farming practices. So this is an initiative to tell the future generations that farming could also be a profession. You don't need to do any other things, particularly for the sons of the farmers, who already have this in their blood. This could be an attractive profession if it is done appropriately. So that's one initiative. I think I should tell you before I stop. There were many other things, life cycle assessment I haven't touched. Maybe some other time we can discuss about it. It's a bit comprehensive thing. So let me stop here and let me answer to your questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, sir, for the informative session.